45 folks that have joined us, so that it's probably close to the 50 or so that we're expecting. So why don't we get started? First of all, good morning. I'm Ron Ricks over here. I'm a program director with CFES Brilliant Pathways. And I'm going to kick off this morning's session as we look to do our planning training retreat. I want to introduce Tara Smith, our Vice President of Operations.
Good morning, everyone.
Hannah Corkery.
Good morning.
Program Director with CFES Brilliant Pathways and helping oversee the North Country program. Dennis, you want to say hello?
Hello.
Dennis is one of our program directors working with Friendship School. Manny?
Good morning, everyone.
Manny Tejada, one of our other program directors that we work with school, and John Rydell.
Hey, everybody. Glad to see some people. I see Terry from Watertown and people from all over the state.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
John's doing a lot of work with our Vermont schools, and I believe Chris Mazzella. Chris? Chris may not, I thought I saw him. Chris Mazzella is another one of our program directors that's working with a lot of the schools in the New York side. Chris is wearing two hats. He's also serving as the interim principal up at Plattsburgh High School now, in addition to his job at CFES. So hopefully when they hire the permanent principal, Chris will be joining us.
I'm here. I'm in the Plattsburgh High conference room. We were muted.
Oh, I got you. You're in PHS. Hi, Chris. Welcome to you and your team.
You're behind the PHS symbol too.
So again, if you go through and look in the chat box, you'll see, who we have here. We want to share with you the CFES Brilliant Pathways staff. And later on, we'll be sharing our role of program directors. We'll be sharing the resource. I've been a program director with CFES Brilliant Pathways for over 20 years. And our roles change and evolve. But basically, we're here to support you and your team on creating a culture of college and career readiness within your school, and specifically providing some direct services to the students. To begin with, I really want to congratulate all of you for being selected as a North Country school. We had close to 80 applicants, and we selected 20, which turned out to be just over 20 at 23 schools that are participating in this exciting initiative here in the North Country. At CFES Brilliant Pathways, our core mission and purpose is to provide college and career access to underserved students, specifically in poor rural and urban areas. So specifically, we work with urban and rural students to get a college-going pathways and support them on their journey. And we've got a lot of nice success. And I assume that you've seen that as you did your research and applying for this. So what are we here for today? Well, today is really the official kickoff of the program in addition to the announcements. Many of you have had your program directors visiting with you, talking with you. But what today is, we want to get you focused. I was a middle school principal with Dennis in Westfield, Mass. when I first got involved with CFES Brilliant Pathways back in 1996 or 97. We were one of their schools. And the exciting thing for us is CFES Brilliant Pathways will build initiatives and programs with you. I love the approach because it wasn't a canned program where we came in with services and said, here, do this, and things very similar to what we're going on. Is we're able to build upon the strengths of our school, the culture of our school, and really increase our capacity to better meet the needs of our underserved students. So that was the exciting part to us. I know as a program director, I've been out talking with schools, and so what do you do? It's like, well, we customize the delivery of services for each and every one of your schools. And you'll see later on, as we go through the planning process, your plan will have similar components to achieve the same things, but it's going to be very different from the school next to you. Just to give you a quick overview of what we're going to do is we're going to share a little bit of who CFES is, where our work is. It's exciting. This program is part of an international association that we have, from Ireland to other countries, to Hawaii, to Florida, to Texas, to California. It's a large network. And yet we do have this small cohort from the North Country that'll be working with it. After we do that, we're going to talk about the core practices that CFES embeds in our programming that we require that you have your scholars. And scholars is a title that we use for your students. We feel they have the potential, so we call them scholars. But the 3 core practices that we'll be participating in addition to a 10-point plan of expectations that we have. After we do that, we're going to do a networking activity with you where you're going to do like an asset inventory of your own school, but you're going to share it with others so that you can start thinking about how to build upon what you already have. Maybe you can strengthen what you have. Maybe we can provide additional resources to improve what you're doing with one of those, whether it's an advisor program, mentoring program, early college awareness aspect. After that, we'll talk about our resources and specifically our webpage, which is new, is just rolled out. Like you, and we give you so much credit for the pivot that you made when this pandemic hit. We've pivoted to provide all kinds of virtual trainings, virtual resources to support you and your staff as you move forward. After we talk about the resources, we're going to talk about some time looking at the planning tool. This is what will guide us through the first year of the program. So what you'll do is you lay a 1-year program, you have some goals and expectations, and do it in pencil because we know it's going to change, it's going to evolve. We'll share with you some of the upcoming events that start as soon as Thursday of this week. Hopefully that gives you a quick overview of what today's session is. We'll go right to just before 11:30. And now I'd like to turn it over to Tara, who's going to tell about who we are, what our missions, and where we go as CFES Brilliant Pathways.
Thanks, Ron. Good morning, everyone. Ron kind of already talked a bit about who we are and what we do, but just wanted to give you all sort of a better sense of this part of the work, because we realize that many of you are coming to us brand new. Some of you have had multiple conversations with team members and probably have a pretty good sense of who we are and what we do. Others of you are returning schools and very familiar with CFES and our program and practices. So this section of the agenda is really to kind of take a deeper dive into who we are, what we do, and how we do it, so that everyone can kind of get on the same page. So for 30 years, we've been working in the nonprofit space and committed to helping students, no matter where they are or where they're from, what resources are available to them, find a pathway to college and to career. So over the last 30 years, we've served about 100,000 students in about 1,500 schools across the country. Currently, we work with 25,000 students, K through 12, urban and rural communities, and in 18 states and 2 countries. We have a really strong partnership with our friends in Ireland who have been able to take the CFES framework and adapt it to the Irish school setting, which is really exciting for us and an incredible network that we've been able to engage in. In terms of what we do, we everything that we focus on is to help students become college and career ready. That's at the core of CFES, and that mission has never changed in the last 30 years. The resources, the support, the structure has evolved as needs continue to evolve. But again, at the core of what we do is really just to help students. And we do that by providing a framework around 3 core practices, which we'll talk a little bit more about shortly. We also do this through resource and support and networks and training, and all of that kind of works together to support this college and career readiness culture and conversation. So we work directly with school teams, which all of you are part of right now, and we develop individualized programming, and we really use the CFES plan, that tool, as a roadmap to see where we can implement these 3 core practices and how they can be customized and tailored to fit the needs of your students in your school community. And it's really all just to help students not only discover the multiple pathways, but to be prepared to face challenges along the way, to be exposed to different opportunities so they can build their knowledge and vocabulary and understand the actual steps that need to be taken, and also develop the skills that are needed that can be translated into different places along the way. So again, our mission, our vision, we don't waver from that, is in helping students think about their futures and be better prepared for their futures. And as I said, our framework is quite simple, actually. We use mentoring, pathways to college and career, and essential skills as the pillars of CFES, Brilliant Pathways. Many of you have heard us talk about these practices, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about them. But these are the practices that we expose students to and engage students in order to help them along the way. We know that these practices, although we'll talk about them individually, they are overlapping, and oftentimes, we can use the essential skill development and pathway conversations in a mentoring space, or when we're talking to students about the benefits of positive role modeling, it oftentimes is connected to skills that are important in terms of leadership and preparing, goal setting, preparing for your future. So these 3 practices are interconnected and overlapping, and we really see them working nicely together in a school community to support this mission and vision. So I'm going to turn things over to Chris, who's going to talk a little bit about our mentoring practice.
Okay, can everybody hear me now? Thank you. Thanks, Tara. So, one of the benefits that we learned at CFES through the pandemic and all the trauma is we were able to really strengthen one aspect of our mentoring program by doing virtual mentoring with our partners. So one of the things that we learned over the last 18 months is how we can connect to more kids and connect them to adults who can help them on their career and college pathway. I broke down the concepts of mentoring and the actual practices into 3 categories. And I first of all want to apologize. With my wearing 2 hats now, I didn't have an opportunity to put together a presentation, but I do have some slides for mentoring that I can put out after this meeting. So the first thing is what the value of mentoring is. It often gives students the opportunity to talk to adults or peers about pathways, maybe challenges that they've come over. And we've always encouraged our mentors to be able to use the essential skills as icebreakers, and then to also be able to talk about how they navigated their pathway and how they became career and college ready. 3 models that we can use and help support all of our schools. The first one is our virtual platform. We have multiple partners. We have college partners, and we try to connect college partners into particular regions. But we also have corporate sponsors. We have Southwest partners. We have SAIC, KPGM. So we try to utilize them in multiple roles, whether it is small group mentoring, if it's a matter of zooming into a classroom and talking about their pathway and talking to students about career and college readiness. And oftentimes it's students that are recent graduates. We had a very strong athlete peer mentor program with 4 college partners: Potsdam State, Plattsburgh State, Middlebury, and 3 partners, excuse me, where kids would during lunch, connect with college athletes and talk about their pathways on a regular basis, sometimes 2 and 3 times a month for 15 to 20 minutes. The virtual opportunities that we can help connect and support, I would embed it in your plan just so you can try to explore that. And I think once you have the opportunity to go to the conference and see all of the neat things that are happening and get feedback from actual practitioners, you'll find very beneficial. The second one would be kind of in-school mentoring, adult to peer or partnership to peer. I'm sitting at Plattsburgh High School right now, and across the street is Plattsburgh State. An example would be trying to access mentors, college students, or even professors or whoever from the college to come and visit campus and meet with students 2 or 3 times a month. One of the successes I had in my past job at Peru High School is we had a very strong teacher mentor team. We had 8 to 10 teachers that every year took 2 or 3 kids and they would meet with them twice a month. They'd give up a prep or they'd have lunch with a student. And we found also, again, a lot of the peer-to-peer mentoring or the teacher mentoring concept worked really well in small groups, 2 or 3 students at a time. And then lastly is peer-to-peer mentoring. With my experience, this can be the most effective, but it's also the most challenging because you're asking peers to make sure that they make appointments, they communicate effectively, they identify a place where they can meet and talk. The peer-to-peer mentoring, oftentimes we work with schools to identify upperclassmen to work with undergrad students. In those areas, we will come in, we'll train your students through a mentor training process. And navigating that and identifying which kids would be the best mentors is the challenge. But oftentimes schools want to identify students that seem to be involved in a lot of things, you know, National Honor Society and sports and all that.
Sure.
Sometimes
Just
those
some
kids
extras,
are the
just
most
in case.
stretched.
Yeah, actually, I'll give them right to Mrs. Merrill. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So navigating how to identify key mentors in your building is something we can also support you with. So those are the 3 aspects that I think that we should all look at, identify what works best in your building. And the other thing is it's part of our 10-point plan, but start small, find something that is working in your building and grow it from there. Don't try to do everything all at once. That's a challenge. There any questions on mentoring? Or how are we taking questions? Are we saving them to the end, Ron?
Yeah, or they can type them in the chat box.
Okay.
And we will save time for the end to do that. But like Chris says, you know, we're starting slow. We're going to start building these programs. It's a 3-year effort. So what's already naturally taking place? Chris, great tips to get us started.
I just want to add also that it's likely that there's some informal mentoring happening in our schools already. And for those of you who are returning partners, you've probably established mentoring programs already. But for our newer schools, one of the exercises our program directors will lead you through a little bit today, and then in future planning visits will be to just look at and inventory what you have in place and sort of see where these natural connections may already be happening or where they would work really well in order to build the foundation for a more formalized mentoring program. So I'm going to turn things over here to John, who's going to talk a little bit about our pathways to college and career practice.
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, I think it's important to think about too, these 3 practices, they're all mixed together and they support one another. As Chris mentioned, you know, for example, we have the Echo Center in Burlington is taking some students out on a research vessel on Lake Champlain. And there's 2 groups rotating. So the group that's not on the ship will be touring Plattsburgh State to learn about college. And then the other group will go on the ship and they'll switch. You know, and obviously mentoring and sort of the essential skills, you'll see how kind of they all work together. But in terms of college and career readiness, you know, we think of it as 2-year, 4-year, and any certificate of value that will help a student get a job, you know, post-secondary. So I think of my own kids, 4 kids. I have one who pursued a culinary track. One was a 4-year college at UVM business major, cosmetology, and then a 2-year school, 2-year JUCO. So it's kind of each one. And I was, we used to be called college for every student. It's still have the acronym. We realized college isn't necessarily for every student. I found that out myself. I'm pushing on my own kids. Oh, you got to go to college. And then I'm realizing, well, they really love this area, and kind of expose them to some different opportunities, and they pursue them. And I kind of feel like that's what we do on a larger level, try and expose students to as many possibilities as there are out there, and then connect that with a 2-year or 4-year school. I think the rural piece is interesting. We've done some research on it, and you all are, you know better than anybody, the students' thought process as they're in a rural school. And, there's studies showing that if you live more than 50 miles from a college, that, it drops off a cliff in terms of you even being exposed to a school to even think about it. There's lots of research, as I'm sure you're aware of, because you're on the ground dealing with students. And we, I think, do a really good job, especially this past year, virtually. We couldn't always get kids on campuses, which I think, we feel like is one of the most important pieces, so they can actually see it. But virtually, we've been able to take young alums from Syracuse, Plattsburgh State, colleges all across the SUNY system, and have them talk about their own experience with the traditional admissions video going. I was talking earlier to some teachers about how every video is great, right? Every school looks amazing. The campus is gorgeous, but to actually hear a student who's been there, and a younger person that's only a few years different from the age of your students, talk about the reality of what college is like. That's a key element for us. Again, we've done a pretty good job, I think, getting students to campuses, but the virtual piece has been a great addition. Chris mentioned partnerships. Our college partnerships are also important in that admissions directors, student life professionals from all areas of colleges are available to speak to your students about questions they have. I mean, we had a couple students from Willsboro, which is just across the lake from UVM, go there, and talking to them after, it was only 40 miles as the crow flies, but they were overwhelmed in certain areas socially and otherwise, and we connected them with the abundance of individuals on campuses now that are there to help support academically, socially. We were talking earlier about some of us who are older and we went to college and they dropped you off and it was kind of like, good luck, Now there is a real team of people waiting to support them. So that's another key area that we try and focus on. And I'll just mention one other thing. Chris had mentioned, some partnerships with schools. Some of them we have Clinton Community College. There's some that are just focused on manufacturing, or some that have like a game design program at Champlain. So we get a spark where they love something. We help them find what that is, and then connect them with the post-secondary option that best fits that. So I'll leave it there and turn it back over to Tara.
Hey, John, let me add one thing to that. We've got a lot of middle schools and upper elementaries, and part of the college and career pathways is exploring career options. I'm doing some work over here in the North Country, and every 4th grader I talk to, they love animals. They're going to be a veterinarian, but they don't like science. They don't like blood. They have all things, but they love it. They're not aware of anything else. So we do a lot of exploration as to what else is in there within the veterinarian. Kids are going to be doctors. Kids are going to be a professional athlete. They're not even on a team yet, but there's so many jobs in professional sports. So we do an awful lot of career exploration, job shadowings, looking in the communities of where you are, so kids can explore those. And then what type of education do you need? And we reach out that way. Like John, you talked about like the Clinton Community College and all these 2-year schools. They either have a certificate or an associate's degree. You can go either way, but there's jobs standing there waiting for them. So what we do with the younger ones is connect the purpose, the relevancy of education today and tomorrow as to where they may like to go. So thank you for sharing the insights with that.
We also are really aware of the multiple pathways that students will want to pursue. And so, when we talk about college, we're really inclusive in terms of what that means. So as John and Ron both mentioned, it could be a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, a trade school, technical, vocational, military. anything that's really something that they have in mind when they graduate and can pursue post-secondary. We also realize that we can't train students technically for jobs that they'll eventually, or career fields. So what we do is we help students develop critical skills that will really help them along the path and also prepare them for both those college pathways and career spaces. So Hannah's going to talk a little bit about our essential skills and what that practice looks like.
Yes. So obviously there's multiple, there's countless ways to find success in multiple paths. And I believe Ron and Chris and John and Tara have also touched upon that it's not one size fits all, but we believe that these skills really are important, not just in school, but after. They're very, very transferable in their goal setting, perseverance, teamwork, agility, networking, and leadership. And I'm sure a lot of your students are already practicing these skills, but these are skills that we have identified as well as other employers and schools for students to be successful within school and then thereafter. Like I said, they are transferable, but they're we just really feel as though if we can hone in on those within your school, within your programming, through mentoring, and then through pathways, these are really the next things that we really find are really, really important as a pillar in our core practices.
And Hannah, as we try to live these skills, like look at the skill of agility, which is one of my newest favorite ones, be able to adapt on the fly. 2 weeks ago, we were scheduled to be in person here, but because of the changes, we had to adjust what we're doing. We're looking for the same outcome, just doing it in a different way. And John, we've done a lot of work with our employers like Southwest Airline, the GE Foundation, and those, and employers are now looking to hire based upon competencies that people have. And it's a combination of their knowledge of an area and the skills they have that equals them being competent in what they want to do, because the competencies are going to remain the same, problem solving, analyzing, communicating, working as group. The situations are going to change around them. Tara and I were fortunate with a couple of our partners, the GE Foundation and the Boston Celtics. We worked with middle school students on the essential skills with the Celtics, and then they went into robotics and some STEM opportunities. And so even the Celtics players were kind of cool, saying it's like, when I get traded or signed as a free agent, these skills here are the transferable ones. I'm going into a new offense, I'm going into a new defense, but they're looking, how do I be a team member? How do I adjust to the new situation? How do I change to an offense or a defense midway through the game? It was kind of neat how they talked about these as not being just essential skills, but permanent skills and that are transferable. Look at perseverance. As a former coach, Hannah, my daughter worked as a dancer, doing the back kickflip, like thousands of failing, and then she finally broke through. At the same time, she'd be trying to solve a science problem or book her home for homework. I can't do this, Dad. She tried it once. So how do we take the skills they have and transfer them to different aspects of their life? So that's the coolest part about these, is these essential or permanent skills that are transferable.
I believe it really does make people more well-rounded human beings within their community, within their school, within their career development or education development. I think that these skills are just so important, and they can excel all over your life. And I think obviously there's so many different skills that you need, but I do feel like these 6 really do pinpoint some of the most important qualities people need.
Right.
And this also seems to be a practice that most people can really wrap their arms around, especially in school communities. Each of us as professionals, as adults, we've, had to rely on a certain set of skills to be where we are today. And I think we can probably recognize, which skills we would want to develop further, where we're feeling confident. But a lot of this practice in terms of helping students develop the skills is just helping them see when they're already using them, right. And so that they can be mindful of that and really utilize them in real life situations and tap into those skills. So thank you, Hannah, for sharing that. We're moving into the next sort of section of our agenda, which is a conversation about creating your CFES programs. And again, we realize that those of you who are part of the conversation right now are coming at us in different sort of stages and phases of this partnership. But really, we've all mentioned already a number of times that the CFES Brilliant Pathways program and the practices are really intended to be woven into your school culture. We don't want them to be viewed as a standalone or as an add-on or more work. We really work hard to make sure that that everything that we do is in line with what your vision is for your students as it relates to college and career. So, and that's why the planning tool is so valuable, to make sure that we're getting all of that information out there and on the same page as we move forward throughout the school year. But we're gonna lead you through a little exercise. And so for those of you who have just a little piece of paper in front of you, if you could replicate this image you see on the screen and finish the drawing, and then we'd like you to share. So I know some of you are in this larger groups in the same room. Some of you have individual screens, but if you could just take a minute and complete this drawing, and then we can hold it up to screens if possible, and take a look at what people have created.
Have a little bit of fun with it. Be creative, imagine, stretch your thinking.
You might not want some of this crew to be too imaginative.
Yeah, it is being recorded, just to be safe, folks.
Okay, give you just another minute. Exercise your creativity, artistic talents. Okay, so for those of you who have your video on and wouldn't mind sharing your image with us, I invite you to do that. And I'm going to try to figure out how to see everyone.
There you go, so I'm holding them up, it looks like a duck. Mine are so small, seeing that. Cool.
Oh.
Oh, Teresa,
Sarah, I like that one.
yeah,
Do you want to know who yours is?
one of the. Sarah, I saw it, I can't tell what, one of the creatures, you know? I turned mine sideways and made it into a swimming pool.
Oh, that's clever.
That's a good one.
What else we have here?
We've seen fishing poles and let's see. Nice, Matt. Thank you. All right. So this exercise is not to although I appreciate your artistic abilities, it's the point is that and as you could see from those of you who were able to share, that each person has a really different interpretation of and outcome ultimately from the line that you were first given, that you first saw. And each of those interpretations turned into something bigger. So I want you to think about that concept as in terms of CFES programs and planning, and really think about, what's already in place, what can be strengthened or different, or be a better outcome in terms of, these practices and this is especially important for those who have been with us, to really look at what's working, what's not. And for those of you who are new to us, kind of looking at this in a perspective that where all ideas are shared and can be exchanged and utilized in kind of an exploratory and open sort of way. That we've talked about this planning, this tool that we have, and it's very organic. You know, we have you put as much information in there as you can in terms of things that you want to see happen this year around mentoring, pathways, and essential skills. It's a great place to just house all of those ideas so you can go back to them. Whatever you put on there doesn't mean it's set in stone, but it's a great place to start that process to build and strengthen and really cultivate the programming. And it's just a reminder to sort of stay flexible in our thinking and sort of see these practices in different ways. And sometimes, you know, even throughout the year as we're reevaluating and reassessing and revisiting our plans and our college and career goals, it's sometimes taking a step back because we can oftentimes in our schools feel very siloed, like, you know, this is what we're doing and it's every single day and these daily hassles and, you know, you're so close to it. So it's good to be able to remember that, you know, it's bigger picture and to really keep things simple. That's really been our motto for the last 30 years. It does not have to be complicated as long as you're working within this framework that we know works in helping students become college and career ready, then your programs are going to be strong.
And Terry, you know, we've got some veteran schools that have been doing some of these best practices and the revision that, but I know a couple of the schools that I'm working with are brand new and they're going to use it like to connect the dots. You know, they have Gear Up in their school, they've got talent search, they've got some other activities, they've got advisee programs. But they want to look at this as becoming an umbrella. And it makes sense because when we unify and package and have kids get the same message from multiple sources, it increases the likelihood of something. So whether we're strengthening individual programs, connecting the dots, putting an umbrella approach so that we're not doing more at the school, we're just doing what we have better and it's connected to each other is a great role for the CFES planning.
And so you've heard us talking about our 3 core practices, and that again is the space we work within to develop programs, to strengthen programs around college and career. But more recently, we've sort of formalized these elements that we pulled together. It's not really new. It's just sort of a sharpened focus on what services or what engagements we want to involve our CFES scholars in. And we're calling this the 10-point plan. So they're basically 10 objectives that we've identified that CFES Fluent Pathways will support and guide throughout the year. And this is really just to help that exposure of our students and interactions that are meaningful. And so you've all received that document of the 10-point plan. This is just a visual representation to remind us of what's included on that, but it's, you know, making sure that students are engaged in mentoring relationships, you know, twice a month. It's exposing students to these opportunities and conversations that can help them understand jobs of the future. It's, you know, visiting college campuses in person, ideally, but if not, you know, virtual college campus tours are incredible opportunities for students to start to envision themselves as college students. What does that look like for them? And the financial literacy, how do you pay for college? It's a huge, huge concern for many of our students and their families. You know, how do we afford college? So it's helping break down some of those barriers and helping them understand that there are ways to pay for college, to afford college, and what the benefit is, you know, what the investment is. You know, and then there's a component to this program where, although we're identifying a certain cohort of students, we really want the whole school to benefit from the relationship. So for our scholar group, you know, they'll be mostly exposed to these core practices and these objectives, but we want them to have opportunities to share what they're learning with their peers, and that can take on a lot of different formats. So those are just a couple highlights of the 10-point plan. Again, this is a document that you should all have received, but this is something that we'll continue to talk through and reference throughout the year as we work with your school teams to develop those CFES programs.
And Tara, just keep in mind, is we're gonna go into a networking activity in a minute, just for you to get into breakout sessions and share what you're already doing. We want you to do an inventory. And then when we come back, we're gonna start sharing our resources, because all of our resources are aligned to that 10-point plan. You know, we've got a webinar coming up on financial literacy. You know, financial literacy, for example, takes different shapes. You know, we're doing different activities with your middle school kids that evolves more into getting ready for the FAFSA and understanding loans and understanding that with the high school kids. So hopefully what you'll see is the resources that we'll be sharing with you will help support and implement that as you move forward with your plan. And are we getting ready to go into the?
Yes, so just to give everybody a little bit better understanding, I'm gonna make breakout rooms, and we're gonna try and put all of our PDs in a different group. Missy, I'm also gonna put you in a group, so I hope that's all right. And we're just gonna just again, like Ron just said, sharing best practices. And as a former college coach, this was the only way I could really be successful, because no idea is just one person. So steal as many ideas and think of ways to incorporate it into your program, into your school. And again, it may not work for you, but also you may want to take some different ideas that may work best for your school and your program.
So as we're getting set up for it, if you can reflect back, because I want two things that come out of this. One is I want you to do an inventory, an asset inventory of your own school. Do you have an advisor-advisee program, a mentoring program? Do you have job shadows? Do you have career awareness? So what are the things that you're already doing that you can start building upon and connecting to? And then the other one is, you know, as a retired principal, you know, I never created anything, I just stole from others. And that's why I love conferences, because what are the things that I can take away and customize and make with our staff? So we're gonna follow in a couple minutes. We're gonna give you about 10 minutes in there. And it's a dialogue, just a conversation, so you can start meeting other members of the North Country Partnership. And then what are you already doing? They may ask a couple questions, and then what we'll do is we'll come back, we'll do a quick share out, and then we'll start moving into our resources and the webpage of CFES Brilliant Pathways, and then taking a look at the plan that we need to draft out that your program directors will be working with. I see Hannah still clicking away. Fortunately, she's got short nails, so it's not loud. Getting us into groups, and when we're ready, we'll go into that. In the meantime, if anybody has questions so far, please type it in the chat box, okay? And then later on, we'll have you unmute yourself, and what we'll do is we'll monitor the chat box and we'll answer the questions.
All right,
So,
and you're off.
okay, click join the group.
Yeah, 10 minutes, yeah.
We've tried, are really possible.
Hey, folks. I gotta leave my other room. I have volume off. Anybody have something that they're already doing they'd like to share? what are some examples of the strengths?
Hello, thought I'd join in.
So what do you have going for you right now that you've been doing well and add to your plan? We've had a small mentoring program in the past. Typically, it's a group of high school students that would mentor more at-risk middle school students. So we had a lunch group sort of.
So we got these ones essentially to the high school, those competencies they have on the strengths, but they also got to know
In progress.
Yep, good call.
So honestly, developing a system or a survey and then
Are we all back?
Minutes goes quickly.
Just multiple computers going. Anybody want to unmute themselves and share out an idea they stole or something that they learned? We encourage cheating and stealing. Okay.
Absolutely.
Then again, I'm from Massachusetts, and the people in there said, "Oh, Ron, you're not stealing." The folks from Harvard, they says, "You're harvesting the hard work of others." I stole some good ideas or harvest their ideas, but it was wonderful in our school.
Hey, Rick, it's Kristen. I think one of the most powerful things is utilizing and harnessing your alumni and trying to find ways to get them involved with your current students, kind of all the way through their journey. So not only those that have just entered their first semester and how that transition went, but those that are established in majors to be able to talk about not only their college, but their major and experiences. And then bringing those people back that, you know, are working in the field now. So if we can utilize our alumni, I think that's one of our big goals this year.
Thanks, Kristen. What a great resource that's available and free.
Mhm.
In the group I was in, we talked a lot about mentoring and what does that look like. And one thing we talked a lot about was peer-to-peer and how influential and important that is, not just for the mentee, but for the mentor. And I referenced my experience at the collegiate level in athletics, how we'd pair athletes up with one another on the team. And it didn't always have to be with the same background or the same position. Sometimes we chose students because they are so different. But what we really honed in on there was you really just need to know your students. And sometimes it works with a similar background and sometimes it'll work better with a different background. But we talked about how peer-to-peer is just so important and so influential to both parties involved.
Thanks, Sam. Somebody else?
I would just add, you know, Chris had mentioned from a Sable that it's not necessarily a single thing, but it's the importance of being able to carve out time within the tight schedule of the day. So we talk about these, there were a lot of great examples. Beth Redondi had mentioned the essential skill work they've done and photographs that they've taken of the kids actually doing the essential skills. But to find the time to carve out when they do make their plan, and I know we'll talk more about this after, but just find those entry points where all these great ideas can actually be, you know, kind of formulated and implemented.
And I think when you get into planning is you're never going to find time. You have to make it. Anybody else before we wrap this up?
Ron, I think one of the things that came out from our discussion, and it based really on what Tara had said, was doing an inventory or thinking about what it is you're already doing, and then thinking about that and leveraging it or enhancing it, rather than feeling like we need to start from the ground up and construct something major and new. That often it's what's the simplest, or by doing a slight shift, we're able to change the effectiveness of what we're doing, or through the shift, change the lens and make something go from low impact to high impact with minimal work.
Great point. And that's exactly where we're going with the planning. Missy, thank you. Okay, slight shift.
Ron, can I add one thing from the Plattsburgh team? But we had a really good conversation with a lot of schools. We did talk about the same thing that Missy had just mentioned regarding, low impact to high impact, and use your existing programs. One of the goals at Plattsburgh is we are going to try to access a lot of faculty and identify what little piece can you bring to our team. A lot of faculty members are saying, I don't want to be on another committee. I don't want to be on this team. It's too much work. And whether it's just one little tiny slice of the pie, you might be a teacher mentor for 2 periods a month. You may be willing to do one event a year, whether it's a, college essay writing prompt and workshop on a half day, trying to expand your team, but not have to overburden your faculty. Give them little chunks of pieces to do, and they're part of your team. And I think the quote is the sum is greater than the whole, or something to that effect. So
great point. I always learn that even a piece of paper is lighter when a team carries it. That same concept of working together. But I think the biggest thing that Chris talked about is invite them to do little tasks, have success, because every one of my staff members, when they said, after they joined up for something, they had success, their next question is, what else can I do? So great pieces of advice.
I'm sorry.
Good.
I would just add the group that I was working in, we didn't really get a chance to dive deep into the conversation, but many of the team members are new to CFES. So we were just kind of stripped it back and talked very basically, who are the scholars that you'd like to identify? Right. And there's some have a pretty good sense, others are still playing around with different groups. But I think that as we kind of move into the next conversation here, which is, the foundation of CFES in that framework is having a school-based team. That's the very first thing that you all need to be paying attention to, is that that's the group of people at school or in your community who can help kind of move the CFES plan forward and kind of regularly with the support of a CFES program director and other CFES support staff. That team could be 3 people, it could be 10 people, however much capacity you have. You could also have a core team, but then pull other people in to take on different components of the program, whether it's just managing peer-to-peer mentors or to plan all the college visits or to engage students in virtual opportunities. So that's the very first thing, and I'm feeling really comfortable seeing all of you here today that you've all identified people that can be part of that team. But then there's that scholar group, and that's thinking about who at your schools will benefit the most from a little extra attention around mentoring, pathways, and essential skill development. We have some schools that will target an entire grade, a whole class of students. We have some that will handpick across different grade levels. We have schools that will look at, other partnerships and programs and services that are providing opportunities for one group of students, and CFES will work with the others to kind of balance that out. So there are lots of ways to identify the students to make up the CFES cohort, and we're happy to talk through some of those options with schools that really aren't quite sure. Ultimately, we'd like you to identify at least 100 students. For those of you who have smaller schools, it can be a smaller number. with the hopes that we can encourage and include students, more students each year, and kind of take that on in terms of scope. So so that's a good starting point for all of our teams.
Even though you're targeting this, a lot of activities can be school-wide and open to others, and we're not tracking the students, we're not doing evaluation or total assessment, we're just looking to see as we go through to justify the program and approach to our funders, so.
So a little bit about how we do this though, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to switch my screens here. We have a number of resources that will allow you all and our program directors and others to help, with your programming. We are really excited to unveil our new website here. It was reorganized because we provided so many virtual opportunities that last year that we didn't have a place to house them all. So, and it was starting to get really confusing on our website. So we've launched a new website, and we want to just take a minute to show you some places that are important for you to be keeping an eye on, especially our newer schools who are unfamiliar with the resources we have available. Our website has a member section, and it will let me in right now because I'm logged in. But if you do not have access, this is a protected section of our website that houses all of our resources and activities to support the CFES plan within those 3 core practices. So you'll want to click on that member section, create a login, which is really just an email address and a password. And any number of people at your school or in the community who want access to this area can create an account. But here you will find we outline our practices, and each of our practices have a landing page that defines it, and then leads you to different activities that were designed as a facilitator guide. So anyone can tap into these resources and lead an activity, in this case, leadership. So here's an example of how our resources are designed. These can be, classroom teachers, advisors, mentors, students, program directors, other support staff can tap into these and easily follow the activity guidelines. The most important resource, I think, is our approach is to really engage students kind of in this gameplay. Mentoring, we try to keep very interactive. Essential skills is very game oriented or exercise oriented, but we make it meaningful by having a really purposeful discussion after doing games and activities to draw the connection between the activities and the skills that they're practicing, again, so they can be mindful of them and translate them into different areas. But I don't want to spend too much time. I think all of you, when you have a moment, can click around, but we have these pages for each of our practices, each of our essential skills. You'll see in pathways, we've got all of our virtual tours listed, different resources for preparing for college, career readiness. College Q&A is a blog where students can post questions, and Manny from our team will answer them. We also have a site that we developed. It's a career assessment for students. So they go through this interest inventory. It's about 60 questions that will help filter different career fields for them to explore. So this is a really great resource to get the conversation started for younger students, but also to really start to encourage our upper grade levels to think about what's out there, what they want to do, and then, as Ron mentioned before, kind of working backwards and seeing, okay, if you want to be here, what are the steps you have to take? What kind of training do you need? What's the job outlook? What's the median salary? And they can save all of this information to a profile that is created. This is free to all of our CFES schools, to our students, and a really great resource to tap into. And then just a couple other, in addition to, in this member section, we have any events that are upcoming. So these are all of our virtual opportunities that John will talk more about. in a moment. In place, this is easy to register and view details, but we also have a really rich resource of archived webinars, things that have happened in the last 2 years on it, really, that are still relevant, and these can be tapped into and used in supporting the conversations around college and career. We'll continue to push out virtual opportunities regularly throughout the year, and it's a great way to expose students to different people and have different conversations about these things that are important. So I will turn things over to Ron and John to talk a little bit more about our role and how we can support your interactions.
You know, Ted, before you leave that, one of the ones I love is our YouTube page, which I think is down the bottom. There's a link to it where it's all of our archived videos. Some are quick things of tips for scholars from professors, from professionals in the field, from other scholars, all the way up to career hours. You know, went in there, we've got Brian Flores, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, talking about leadership, former New York Governor George Pataki, you know, talking about career readiness and the changing of the workforce. These are some great things you can do with your students or with the staff. One of the things I want to talk about is the role of the program director. Okay, we met them at the kickoff of it. We're your go-to person. We're your first point of contact. We're the ones that will get to know you more personally, work through your schools. But I see my role is to help facilitate CFES resources as to where you want to achieve. You know, Tara went back and showed us some of the essential skills activities that are written up like lesson plans. I mean, if you had the need for training, one of us could come into the school and do a training either with student leaders or with your staff on the essential skills lessons and how to embed them in the classroom. We could do mentor training for, let's say you had 11th graders that were going to mentor 9th graders, transition programs. We can provide the direct training. And for example, my schools, if I'm not the best person I think we have, I'll bring a Tara, Hannah, Dennis, Missy, somebody else in that has that, and I will work with them to deliver the skills for you. So here's our expectation is that your program director will have regular contact and communication with you. I know I try to do it weekly, you know, more than just an email, it may be a call or things. But one of the first things your program director will do is after this initial training is schedule a time to either virtually or be on site. We get to work through and finalize the first draft of your action plan for the year. So we will be following up with you at your convenience as to when we get that draft done. Needs to be done and completed by October 11th. Another thing that we have is we have a commitment to have our program directors be able to visit on-site or in quality time virtually with you at least twice a month. So we'll be out, we can work with your staffs, we can be supportive at staff meetings, we can do leadership trainings, mentor trainings, help build partnerships in the communities. But again, we're there to be on site for twice. One of the things I love as a program director is spending time with your students or your scholars, you know, getting to hear from them. You know, I was an administrator, a middle school principal and a district administrator at the end of my career. And what I heard from my staff and the people in the schools compared to my own kids at home, there were some differences there. So it's nice to see the reality of what young people have, their needs are, how they apply agility. So we'll interact with your scholars. We'll provide some of that mentoring and some of that career awareness. And the other thing is, like I said, we talked about facilitating it, but really we want to keep you on track. We want to ask you questions, get you thinking. It's not in an evaluative way. It's like, how do we win-win? How do we move forward? And the bottom line is, we may want to work with you and other resources so that you're not stepping on toes of a Gear Up program, a Talent Ed or other things, but let's package it all together. And that's the facilitation that your program directors are trained in and doing. Again, it's your primary start. It's where to ask questions, and then we know where to get resources. So hopefully you utilize us well. A lot of what we have is virtual opportunities. John, you want to give us a little highlight?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. I think you and Tara did a good job kind of just scrolling through and giving an idea. I think we had 82 virtual opportunities last year, which is, more than anybody could see, right? But that's why we think of it kind of as a menu. You know what you need, when you can watch, and we'll get them out to you as early as possible. Like Tara showed, you can click on and it has the dates. One way to think about it is we try and break them into categories of need that really the schools have said, we want virtual opportunities and individuals to talk about. We need the most help in these areas. So financial literacy has come up a ton. We have people from banks who will talk about basic savings to people who are focused more on college and how to save like a 503 plan. And it's mostly for students and parents, and a lot of them are for teachers as well. But every one of these is how do we help students get to college and career and equip them to be successful. So financial literacy, diversity, equity, inclusion has been a very hot topic. People have really wanted some more virtual opportunities on that. We kicked it off last week with some leaders of first gen centers at Boston University, UVM, and an expert on rural and how to help first gen students be successful. STEM, we have a huge STEM program that Chris has done a good job with. So we'll have engineers from NASA. And again, some of it is, these are, like Ron said, we've had George Pataki, NFL coaches. So some of them are, kind of high up individuals, but they talk about the things that we think our students need most, like how did they get to where they're at? How do they persevere? They weave in the essential skills. So it's not too highbrow. They bring it down to a student's level, and all of them are, I think the key is, rather than these being a one-off, it's like, yep, you watch this, and then schools have embedded in their curriculum and they've had a discussion after each of the sessions, which are recorded, so you can use them whenever you can get to them. So some are on leadership and the essential skills, and then I would say that social emotional learning has become certainly a topic of need for sure. So they're kind of in categories. And again, we'd love for you to push them out to, so if it's a STEM, one focused on STEM, your science teachers, it could be good for them and their students to watch and embed the curriculum wherever they can. And we're always open to ideas. We have a huge network where we can draw. Some of it's right down in the trenches where it's like, how do you produce a resume? TransPerfect is one of the largest translation companies in the world, and they've done everything from a LinkedIn page. How do you do an interview and present well? So we think it touches on the areas that you have said you would like programming most.
Good. Thanks, John. Well, we got about 10 minutes left, and what we want to do is, within a couple of minutes, we're going to introduce the planning process, and then we'll give you a couple important details and wrap up.
Yeah, so I'll be brief just for the sake of time. As Ron has mentioned, as the role of the program director, so they'll be in touch with you to schedule visits and also work on the Google Doc that you should all have access to. Kelsey, our fantastic executive assistant, should granted everyone access, so you have your own folder. And this is a live document, and it's really, really important to fill out so that communication is clear between you and your PD, but also it's really clear what the goals are, and goal setting, which is an essential skill. But it's really important that it's evolving. It's not going to be set in stone. It has to evolve, because that's how we work. We have to be agile, another essential skill. But again, we want to make sure we're hitting our 10-point plan, but also really fulfilling the need for the students and for your school, and that we're all understanding what's needed here. Again, it's a live document and it will change, but that will be due October 11th. We do know that some of you have that Monday off, so please feel free to use that time. But then we'll have a mid-year assessment and then an end-of-the-year assessment. January is the mid-year, and the end of the year will be in June. And again, your PDs will be working closely with you so that we are achieving those goals.
And again, it's a straightforward document. It's
super simple.
It's all fill in with the Google Docs. And what we're asking for is, identify your school. Who are your target audiences? Just spread it out grade wise. You'll see the form in there. And then what are the major components or activities? Broken up by our practices of college and career pathways, mentoring, and essential skills, and then some others. You may want to build some STEM ideas in, some STEM action. You may want to identify what you already have in place and maybe like we talked earlier, putting that little twist, adding something to it, taking it from a different way. Because I know coming up, we've got our global conference, which is October 25th to the 26th. It's a hybrid conference. It's both in person and it's virtual. Last year we were 100% virtual. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because one of the presenters is Ray McNulty, the former educational commissioner from Vermont. He's was a fellow for the Melinda Gates. He was president of the International Center for Leadership and Education. But he's talking about just what we talked about is what are schools doing with best practices? And best practices, what are you doing well? How do you replicate it and make it better? But how do you move to your next practices? Next practices are what change your organization. They make it different because you're not already doing better at what you're already doing, you're doing something new. So he's our keynote speaker. So that's going to be October 25th and 26th. We've been in touch with you that all of our schools have the availability of having a double room with 2 people sharing a room to stay over and be on site. If we have schools that are local that can drive for the day and they can be on site, or everybody else is free to do it virtual. You may want to reach out to your superintendent, your principals, other staff members, because everything will be archived for a year. So if they register it, go to a session or 2, want to go back and watch something else, they can watch it for up to a year. We've got some Southwest Airlines is talking about how they embed the essential skills into their workforce. The same thing with SAIC, the aerospace engineering company, of how they provide virtual mentoring. But there's a lot of hands-on thematic things that go through. Netflix Air is talking about how they've pivoted during this time. And these are many of the corporate sponsors that we deal with. So that's October 25th to the 26th. You should all have a link to register. Encourage your staff to register. And we also have scholar sessions on both days for kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade up through high school, where it's designed specifically for them to get onto college and career pathways. You may want to bed those in. Another thing we have coming up real quick is on Thursday is our CCR advisor training. We do those each month. We've created a certified program with the University of Vermont to train people as a college and career readiness advisor. It's an online, it's a virtual training where we have a live opening and closing session. And then in between, folks will go to recorded sessions that they watch on demand and complete some Google things. So you get a professional certificate, but it's that whole idea we talked about is how do we get more people involved? One of the schools I work with here on Lake Champlain, we've got a 6th grade teacher who's completed the CCR training, and he's also an assistant football coach. It's so cool of how he's changed and incorporated concept in 6th grade on career exploration and how he's talking about high school graduation and college pathways with his football players there. So we do that with all of your school staff. We also do it to reach out to corporate partners. If you have a chamber of commerce, you have a major corporation, they have a corporate training for that. And we also do it for parents, where we get more specific into the FAFSA process, the financial aid. But what do parents need to know about their kids on a college and career pathway? So the one is a generic training coming up on September 23rd, but reach out. Folks, you may want to sign up for that to get a good introduction into the resources and the trainings that CFES does, and pick up some professional development points for your recertification. So just one of our things with that. Chris, you want to talk about schools of distinction? Manny just put you guys are muted there, Chris. Manny just put a link into where you could, in the chat, where you can just click on that and go right to registration.
I can talk a little bit about school of distinction. This is an opportunity for schools to go through a process of documenting the work that they're doing within the CFES program and apply to be a school of distinction. That the application process is really straightforward. It's more of a self-assessment using a rubric that we've created on a scale of 1 to 4, where program and practices are and how they're implemented. And so if this is something that you're interested in, there's a box on the planning document for you to kind of declare your intentions of moving through that process. It's very doable. Most of our schools are well within the school of distinction range, but it takes a little bit of time to just compile and document things that you're doing throughout the course of the year in a portfolio format that's submitted in June. But we'll talk more about this, especially for those of you who are new to CFES. We can get in depth and we're just updating the rubric slightly to fit the format of this year, and then we'll be able to share that out so you can have a sense of what that looks like.
Good. John, branding and social media?
Yeah, I'll go quick. So with social media, we'd love to have you all send us things that you were doing, or if we're there, we're participating on doing some activities or having a guest. We love to share as much as we can on social media. I also we all chip in and write press releases or things that you might be doing that are going well at your school that we can share with local media. But social media has been a real, we tag a lot of different organizations, our corporate and college partners love to be involved and show what's going on at your school. Branding, we can share some basic things that we adhere to just in terms of keeping things consistent from a branding perspective. But I'll send a few things out and just, think about when you're doing things for social media and things that we could share. Thanks.
As being a principal in the program, it's nice to know that the staff and the community knows we're part of a larger network. It's something around the country in Ireland dealing with diverse things, but also it's really nice to celebrate your successes. I mean, I know my school administration used to love it when our school would have things that you would show up on. We didn't have Facebook back then, but in some article that was written, and would share a copy. Wow, they're talking about our school and the work that we're doing. So we got about 2 minutes to wrap up. Any thoughts about the takeaways, Hannah, or where we go from here?
Well, first, thank you everybody for joining us today, but I would say, going forward, it's going to be exciting to work with your PDs to schedule a visit and to work on that live document and really implement what we are learning here today, what we learned from each other. But I think some of the key takeaways is just how much knowledge is being shared right now and how much experience is engulfed with all of you, and it's going to be exciting to learn from one another, but also implement what's going to be best practices for you and your programs.
Good. Again, thanks for joining us. Personally, we would have spent multiple hours in person, so we gave you a lot of information. So take a nice breath and think about and spend some time. Where do you want to go with this? What's best for your school? What's best for your community? Your program director will be in touch with you in the near future to schedule follow-up time to help you flush out that plan, where you want to go. And I really encourage you to get involved. Share our resources with your staff. Get that link out to them, join our webpage and share things. I encourage you to sign up for the CCR advisor training that starts Thursday. It gives you a nice overview of it. It gives you a week training. Get enrolled in the national conference, but get involved, because I really think we have a lot of resources to help meet people in your school.
Thursday.
Yeah. We have Colgate Cares Day coming up that you're welcome to participate with us. We've got about 15 volunteers from Colgate Palmolive that are going to do some virtual mentoring and have some classes talk about their professional pathways, where they came from. We're going to have everything from warehouse technicians to vice presidents to research and design scientists, but it's one of the things coming up. That's on September 30th. If it's something that ties into your school or even one of your classes where it's a family consumer science class or whatever, but reach out and get involved with that. You know, we've got the CFES Brilliant Pathway plans that are due on the October 11th. Then we're following up with another CCR advisor training in October, and then followed by the National Global Conference on the 25th and 26th. So folks, thank you for hanging in today. Going through it, hopefully we planted the seed, started stretching your thinking so that half a circle that we gave you or a heart or whatever it was, you can finish the design